Iowa City is a unique community. This uniqueness is shaped by the people who contribute their ideas, their gifts, and their energy to the life of Iowa City and the university. Welcome to a series of biographical interviews of special women and men who have affected this community. Their contributions have been valuable, their lives creative and full. What brought them here? Who influenced them? What contributions have pleased them the most? These and other questions will be explored during this series of interviews entitled, Tell Me Your Story. For anyone who knows Joyce Summerwell, these words come quickly to mind. Boundless energy, creative, intelligent, organized, and an innovative leader. The force and inspiration in the development of Project Art at University Hospitals in Iowa City, Joyce, with administrative support, began this innovative program in 1978. And in 1987, she was named director of the Department of Patient and Guest Relations at the University Hospital. Joyce now is responsible for designing, evaluating, and implementing activities and programs for patients and visitors in one of the country's largest teaching hospitals, a hospital with over 33,000 admissions a year, almost 500,000 patient clinic visits, and over 24,000 emergency visits. But the hospital jobs are only part of her story. Joyce's community involvements extend to chairing the Iowa City Design Review Committee, acting in the Iowa City Community Theater, fundraising for various service, community, and school campaigns, and establishing new programs at the University Museum of Art. She currently serves on the Iowa City Johnson County Regional Cultural and Conference Center project. In 1990, Joyce was awarded the Iowa City Area Chamber of Commerce Star Award. This award is presented to an individual who has made an exceptional impact to the arts in our region in terms of cultural excellence and community-wide enrichment. She and her husband Dick have raised 3 children in Iowa City, Tracy, Kelly, and Jeffrey. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, Joyce.
Welcome.
Your story begins, I know, in Detroit, and where you were born April 5th, 1937. There's a wonderful story that I heard that you permanently shocked your mother. What's this about?
Well, Ellen, I would say that my mother was a very private, retiring type of person who was very cautious about her expressions of emotion. And I think she was permanently shocked when I was born because I have always had a great deal of energy and I've always loved to be surrounded by other people. I mean, I used to collect people when I was little, whether they were in doll form, animal form, or real people form. And I think I always exhausted my mother. And at a very early age, I think that she, who always loved art and music and books, thought, gee, we're going to have to get Joyce on a program where she can develop some inner resources or we're all going to die of exhaustion.
That's a great...
So that's sort of really how my interest began in the arts.
Well, tell me about your parents.
Well, my father grew up speaking French. He was from a French-speaking family and lived in Connecticut all his life until after prep school he came to Detroit for a summer and never went back to college. And he had some French relatives living in the Detroit area at that time, and decided he wanted to stay in Detroit, and there he met Mother, and obviously got married and had a family and lived there until he died at quite a young age, at age 49.
Now, did his grandparents come from France?
Right, right, and we're really sort of land owners as far as I know, but all I can remember as a small child that when my grand-mère came to visit us, whom we called grand-mère, she was always speaking French, and that was the only time I think I was truly intimidated by others. I used to just sort of shy in the corner and wonder all this language that was going on. And I can remember at home very early on my father speaking French at the dinner table. And then during the Second World War, as so many, I think, first or second generation immigrants thought, we are Americans and we're going to speak English. And I can almost remember the time in which he said, we will only speak English. And I think there was something to it that my mother never quite caught on to the French language. But,
But you did. You took it in college.
well, I majored in it in college, and in high school, of course, at that time, the high schools stressed a strong language background, so I had 4 years of French, and it came back rather quickly, and I had my father there to sort of help with pronunciation, and but we took Latin and Spanish as well, so.
Well, you said you had all this energy, which I know you do, and you liked art since you've been very young. What did you find to do growing up before you hit college?
Before growing up, well,
For this outlet?
for this outlet. Well, what's interesting is that I think in the summer, when I think Mother would get really very tired of all the people that I collected and all the activities that I planned and little telephone games going back and forth, we used to go almost daily down to the Art Institute in Detroit. And I think my brother and I had more creative ways of seeing the Detroit Institute of Arts, and that was we used to hide behind their medieval selection of armor and so forth. But it's a wonderful museum, and I think that's where my real love came. And I think that's where I started seeing how other people viewed the world through the visual arts at a very young age. But at that time, I wasn't thinking that art was anything you did but something you enjoyed, and, but nothing that you would do as a profession.
And your mother encouraged this?
Oh yes, very definitely. We were surrounded by art and books and music growing up at all the times. And I think the other disappointment, not that my energy was a disappointment, I think it was just a shock, is that I think Mother always wanted me to be a pianist. And I really don't have much talent, but I certainly tried very hard at it. And I do have a great appreciation for music. And I love to, I mean, people, I think Dick would probably deny this, but I do enjoy sitting down to the piano. I just don't enjoy playing in front of other people because I'm not very good.
Does your brother, you have one brother?
Just one brother.
Who's 4 years older than you, and he lives in Michigan.
He lives in Charlevoix now, but he also obviously grew up in Detroit and then stayed and worked with the Detroit Edison Company for years, and then just recently took early retirement. And I love his life now because it's so different than his life in Detroit. He's almost like the Grizzly Adams of the family. He has become a self-sustaining farmer and landowner and loves the North Woods, and he and Carol, my sister-in-law, just love their life. And they walk and hike and grow things and enjoy the water and the outdoors.
So after high school, you were off to the University of Michigan.
Yes.
And you majored in art history and French.
And French together.
And and something happened there besides getting a wonderful education at the University of Michigan. You met your husband.
Oh, yes.
And is there a story to that?
That's a high point. Well, maybe and maybe not, but I'd like to back up. The reason that I really majored in French in college was I was so impressed. I think all of us have some sort of our life definition or our life path by the influences that we have in our life. And I was so influenced by two teachers in high school. I went to a Redford High School, which is a wonderful public high school, and certainly was at that time, but it was always very overcrowded. So they always had to bunch all the people into very fast-track programs. So we were either put in advanced programs, and so unfortunately they put people in college directed programs or vocational programs. And I, of course, was put in the college trained program, and I had two teachers there that so influenced my thinking. Miss McKay, who was a French teacher, and it was only because of her I decided to major in French, not because I enjoyed French so much, but she was such a marvelous mentor. She always expected more of you than you thought you could produce yourself. And that was sort of, at that time, it was never verbalized that way, but as life went on, I could always, her background and her backing of me always would say, you can do it, you can do it. And that, in addition to your own parental support, I think, that you just develop pretty soon, you can do anything you really want to do. And because I loved her so much and what she did and how she exposed us to so many of the things that are influenced by French history and French culture, French civilization, I thought, this is what I want my life to be. And of course, at Michigan, after having 4 years of high school French, I was put into some of the more advanced courses early on. And art history only came to me because I knew I was going to be very interested in it because I've always loved art, but never knew I would do anything except that. But another teacher also influenced me in that.
And
that
who
was
was that?
Dr. Marvin Eisenberg from the University of Michigan, who is a magnificent teacher. And in a general survey course of art history, I mean, my eyes were opened to seeing how the world exists, and it exists through art history.
Do these two teachers know how you feel about them? Are they still living?
No, Miss McKay has been dead for quite some time. But yes, every time I would come back from Michigan, I would always, meet with her and talk to her. Dr. Eisenberg is retired. He's a professor emeritus of University of Michigan. And about 10 years ago, I was in Detroit, and I met him on the steps of the DIA. And I walked up to him, and I introduced myself, and I said, "I'm sure you don't remember me. I was one of 350 students in a variety of your classes." And he said, "Oh, yes, I do." And of course, that was probably being very kind, but he so influenced the way I looked at things, I thought, and the way that you become interested in how other people view things. And it truly, quite frankly, art is a great way, easy way of understanding history through the ages, because you really don't have to read a lot, you have to look a lot, and then study from there.
So I know you did a lot of studying at University of Michigan, but you also, was there a story about meeting Dick?
Well, it was a blind date, actually, and it was sort of a funny story. I don't know if anyone would even be interested in hearing it, but I got a telegram one afternoon when I was at home where I was living, and it said, "We'll be by to pick you up." And my very good friend and roommate, his big brother or older brother was Dick's roommate or something, and they thought that we would have great fun together. And I was so fascinated by the idea of somebody who would send a telegram to ask for a blind date. So yes, he came by and we had an awful lot of fun. And it has sort of continued that like that for 33 years.
That's great. After college, you married, and I know you traveled around, and you came to Iowa City as a wife and a mother then. What was it, 1963?
1963.
What did you decide to focus on with that energy? I know you were raising your family, but you...
Well, when we first came to Iowa City, it was really sort of... I think both Dick and I planned that it would be a wonderful place to raise children, but it was really only to see if he really liked working for a bank that size, of a family bank. And of course, we immediately fell in love with Iowa City. I had never been in a town the size of Iowa City. I thought, what is this going to be like? I immediately fell in love with it, because anybody who loves people and anybody who is sort of focused in one direction or would like to be interested in one direction, a smaller town is the place to be, because you can make some impact. I mean, you can collect people together, get some ideas going, and get some results going. So from the very beginning, I think I was very involved with childcare and children and the library at that time. I remember story hours down here from Hazel Westgate from the very beginning of time. And then about the time that the museum was underway, my father-in-law, Bill Somerville, was very active with the fundraising efforts of that. And we had the opportunity to get to know and meet Olfert Wilkie, who is probably also one of the greatest influences of my life. And I was so enamored with this man and his vision and his sort of artistic eye and his personality. He was just quite the most wonderful character anyone would ever want to know.
And did the two of you kind of talk about envisioning a docent program?
Yes, we talked about it, and with a little bit of a teaching background and a love of art history, I thought, we should be opening up the museum doors to all ages and at all levels of understanding, and I had never had any training in either being a docent or organizing a program, but Olfert said, well, go do it. So for several months, we organized maybe 12, 15 women together who had some time on their hands or were interested in the arts, and he certainly schooled us beautifully. But out of that schooling came the sort of revelation of what his personality and his character is all about, which is, of course, the only reason we ever want to know anything about the arts is what goes on behind it. So that was quite a treat.
Tell me then, how did Project Art, which is kind of, I can't think of that program without thinking of you.
Oh.
How did that come into being, and what went behind that creation?
At the time that I was helping out at the museum as a volunteer, I was also interested at that same time in politics. And we had a personal friend who was running for Congress, and I offered to do his scheduling for him. And then when he won the primary, he needed to put together a campaign staff, and I, from then on, and then when he won the election, I stayed with him through that. But I think at the very same time, I can't speak for John Colleton, but at the same time that I was doing those activities, John had just been appointed as director of university hospitals. And as you well know, he has a wonderful focus and vision of his own, and he knew exactly where the healthcare program should go and where the hospitals should be going. And I think he, more than anybody, wanted to see the humanistic side of healthcare become evident in university hospitals. So I think it was sort of by chance meeting at one time, but he asked if I would be interested in seeing if art would be appropriate in a healthcare setting. And I said, certainly, I'd love to come over and look. And I went looking through the halls, and I could see a lot of gray-green, dreary tile and a lot of people in need of something besides good medical care. And it sort of fascinated me, the idea that the arts had a place in a healthcare setting. So we talked a little, and I put together a feasibility study of how it could work. But I should preface all these remarks that the success of the Project Art program is dependent upon many, many people, and many people's assistance in offering their suggestions and their wisdom to it. And it has been a successful program because of those people.
It's an incredible program, how the change, if people went in the hospital 20 years ago, and to see it now. But there's also that you have to, in the state construction, so much percent of state construction money has to go for the arts.
Yes,
right?
in 1978, the state legislature passed a bill called the Art and State Buildings Program, which mandated that any new construction for public use would have to allocate 1/2% of building construction funds towards the acquisition of fine arts. And that's a very forward-thinking legislature, and many, many state legislatures have done so throughout the country. And so that program allowed us, of course, we have to come up with our own money, but that allowed us then to take another venue of the Project Art program from just programming to the acquisitions of building a very fine art collection for the hospital.
Well, who decides what goes in that? How did you decide what area to concentrate on? Glass, I know you have glass pieces.
From the very beginning, it was always our goal, and it was certainly an administrative decision from early on, that what we wanted to do is make sure that we're meeting the needs of the people we serve. And I think there is sometimes a separation from museums from people. People feel they don't know enough to go into it, or there's some sort of a barrier. And that's the opposite of everything that I feel about the arts. They should be in all public places, in all circumstances, and most importantly, during one's most serious time of their lives, during a crisis, and that's many times in a hospital setting. But how we decide upon what goes in the hospital, we wanted quality work. We wanted, obviously, the work that people would be drawn towards and get some sort of rehabilitation or restoration or meditation from, some sort of diversionary activities. So we selected works that we felt would be museum quality in the way of standards, but would draw people immediately to them. And one of the areas that the Museum of Art does not collect is in the decorative arts in any kind of depth at all. And we thought, what a wonderful opportunity to introduce the glass art, because it's, one, very lively. One doesn't have to know a great deal about it to enjoy it. The design of the hospitals, as you know, is one that draws in natural light and open spaces and whatnot, and it's just a natural for glass art. So that was obviously a natural, and we've built upon that collection. Another very strong feeling of ours, when we started the program, we wanted to make sure that the hospitals, which belongs to all of us in the state of Iowa, represents the best that Iowa has to offer from the artist. And that is exactly what we try to do. So we try in our permanent collection to have a work from every artist who is represented by a regents, a Board of Regents institution, and all of those Iowa-trained artists, whether from Iowa or Iowa State or wherever, who have received some sort of reputation, we want to show Iowans and what wonderful talent is right here in Iowa. And so really that is the bulk of our collection, and we're very, very proud of it.
It is a wonderful place to walk around. Tell me now, what went into your decision to move from Project Art? Were you ready for change and new direction? And the hospital was going in new
Right.
direction as director of
Right.
patient and guest relations.
Well, I'm very change-oriented. I love change at all times. If you can't learn something new on your job today, then maybe you better start looking for a new job. And one of the most wonderful things about working at the hospital are there are always these opportunities, and there are always challenges and new opportunities. And one of the areas that we saw early on is that we really needed to coordinate all the support services so that people knew that there either could be a place where people could go for these services or at least a functional ease of getting to them and knowing more about them. And I think the more we assume and we understand that there's superb medical care going on there, but there are so many other needs that people have besides just medical care. So a group of us, again, put together some ideas about getting a patient and visitor activity center together, and John Colleton again was very receptive, very supportive. In fact, I'm sure that was a part of his basic philosophy of humanizing the hospital environment, of coordinating these services into one location. In addition to that, at the same time, we need always to sort of make sure that what we think that we're doing that is good for the people we're serving is actually that way. So there needed to be an area in which we could actually find out from people, are we providing the services that you want? Are there other services that you would like? And so with the coordination of the patient rep program, the volunteer program, activities therapy program, the Project Art program, the medical museum program, information desk, anywhere where people collect information, they can come together in one area now.
And you're in charge of all those areas?
Except for the volunteer program, and that is, there is a volunteer director, and that volunteer director reports to hospital administration, as I do. And, but we work very, very closely together, patient's library.
Tell me, Joyce, in this creation, in this, I've been up to the medical museum and up in it's 8th floor in the hospital. Did you get resistance from this, or a little flack that maybe some of this was not essential, or were people forward enough thinking that you haven't had much criticism over this?
Well, I guess I don't spend too much time dwelling on criticism. If you feel that you're on the right track and you have the support and there's justification for it and the patients are demanding it and respect, then yes, there'll always be people. I know when Project Art program started, I always used to chuckle when people say, you'd get paid for this? Even though I'd be over there many, many nights and weekends. Right. And because people have a hard time, many people, adapting to new ideas and changes. Well, I love that, and so that never halts me in the way. But we were very concerned that when there's a shortage of hospital space for more clinic space, but it has been such a wonderful area for patients and their families to come, to get away from the hospital bustle, to find a place of meditation, so that they can be together with their families, they can get food, and they can see something of normalcy, and they can be stimulated by programs, and they can visit music. This really says a lot about how we care for the individual, and that is equally as important as how we care medically for the person. And we want to send them back to their communities knowing that we've treated them as whole individuals, healthy whole individuals.
You mentioned, I want to just ask a couple personal things. You mentioned that you had a teacher in high school, the French teacher, the teacher in college, and Alfort made a big difference in your life. Anybody in the last 10 years?
Oh, I would have to say John Colleton. A wonderful mentor. I've just felt very proud to be able to work for somebody. He's a leader of incredible vision and creativity and innovation, and seems to want that in other people, and that's quite astounding to be able to work for somebody.
What do you view your greatest strengths?
Well, certainly liking people, I think, and enjoying listening to many different ideas and coming up with a consensus that we can all go forward. I like to organize things for maybe a common good to go forward in something. I'm very committed, I guess, to having people feel that their ideas are being listened to and should be acted upon. And I think anything that people deserve to not only to be listened to, but we need to incorporate their ideas in everything we do every single day. And not everybody's going to get everything they want, but I do think you have to be open to new ideas at all times. And I think
like
that
change.
I like change, and I like new ideas, and I like to think that I can then work towards that end.
Tell me, in your very public job, very demanding job, what do you do to relax, or do you ever?
I do relax.
You do
very
relax.
much so.
What do you do?
Actually, I know people are astounded when they do know me well. They know that I am rather a private person. I very much like to spend time by myself and with Dick and with my family. I love to read. A day does not go by in which I do not read something. And I love to spend time on water. But I also like other activities. I like to play tennis, and I love to dance, and love to go to movies. But basically, I think at the end of a day, I enjoy being by myself or with Dick.
Tell me about your children. Tell me where they are and what they're about.
Well, I'm very proud of all of them because they are such interesting individuals, and I sort of sit back and get amused and I'm very, very proud of them because they are so independent and very their own people. Tracy and her husband Russell have recently moved to Chicago, and our youngest son Jeffrey just got married and is now in Chicago, and Kelly moved from Milwaukee back to Chicago, so we are blessed with having all of our family very close at hand, which is wonderful.
Tell me, I know you like adventure and you like change, you said, in your work, but you also like adventure in your play. You've had a couple wonderful trips. You've whitewater rafted, and then just recently you were trekking in Nepal.
Right. I love to travel. Dick loves to travel, and we like to sort of do adventuresome things where we're physically active. We're not very good at sitting and listening to other people for great lengths of time. So when we are away, we really like to get away. The trip to Nepal, it was just a sort of a trip out of the stars. We wanted something different. We both enjoy learning about other cultures and other people, and Nepal was an adventure to remember. The whitewater rafting, we love sort of thinking that we're living on the edge. Maybe we're not at all, but that was so much fun, and we like to be able to do things with our kids, and when we do get together, we like to play hard and fast.
All right, I want to know what you want to do when you retire, or do you know?
Retire, what a word.
I know it. Well, you might be retiring in the next few years.
I guess I would say maybe another change. I'll always be interested in the hospital environment and healthcare, because I think it's crucial. I think the wave of the future, the growth of industry, the growth of service professionals will be in the healthcare field. I think it's so important that we always keep in mind the needs of the people that are there. I think I would like to get back to doing some more volunteering with people, maybe with the elderly or Meals on Wheels, something like this. I think if I were to leave my job tomorrow, I would definitely always want to stay in the arts in some ways, public arts format of some way, volunteer or whatever.
Well, I look forward to know and to see what you are going to do next. It's going to be something exciting and wonderful, I know, Joyce. Thank you for being my guest on Tell Me Your Story.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
My guest today has been Joyce Summerwell, the Director of the Department of Patient and Guest Relations at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. In this demanding position, she is responsible for designing and implementing programs and activities for the thousands of patients and visitors who enter the doors at university hospitals and clinics. Art has been a passion of Joyce's throughout her life. As a child, as a graduate in art history and French at the University of Michigan, in implementing a docent program at the University of Iowa Museum of Art, as a member of the Iowa City Design Review Committee, and in '78 establishing the very successful Project Art at university hospitals. A fundraiser for numerous community and civic organizations, she is currently serving on the Iowa City Johnson County Regional Cultural Conference Center project. In 1990, she was awarded by the Iowa City Chamber of Commerce the Star Award. This award honors an individual who has made an exceptional contribution to the arts and to cultural excellence. Joyce's envisioning and implementing creative programs, her leadership, and her enthusiastic and innovative support of the arts and humanities has enlivened and enriched our community. We're fortunate she moved here in 1963 and that she decided to stay.